Hi, everybody, and welcome back to our seminar series on STEM Graduate Chronicles hosted by the EBI. Today, I'm joined by Garret Genco, a second-year PhD student at Northern Arizona University studying soil microbiology. Hi, Garret. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Logan. It's great to be on this. Never done this before, but I'm excited.
Yeah, of course. So just to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're studying?
Sure. So my name is Gareth, like you mentioned. I originally came from New York City. That's where I grew up and lived. I went to undergrad in Colby College, a small liberal arts college in Maine. There, I studied biology and aquatic sciences, and that's where I got my first introduction to like science. And I really wanted to do aquatic sciences, mainly in microbiology. But then actually, I did some DOE internships through SULI with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and Brookhaven National Laboratories, where I really got my interest in like actually doing more molecular and more microbiology work, and I ended up deciding I wanted to do my PhD here at NAU with my advisor, Dr. Javier Ceja Navarro, doing soil microbiology and studying trophic interactions between plants and their soil microbiome.
Perfect. So today we're going to talk a little bit about curriculums and what graduate student curriculums look like. Can you tell us a little bit about like the choices of classes you have to enroll in? Do you have an option to choose what classes you pursue?
You do. So it's in conjunction with your advisor and also your grad advisor committee once you actually create that with whoever you decide based on your research. And at NAU at least, we have choices between 100 level to 600 level, but to fulfill your graduate requirements, you need to take majority 500 level and 600 level courses. You're allowed to take two 400 level courses to suffice to fill your graduate requirements for your PhD. I'm not too sure what the requirements are for the master's, but it's sure something similar where it's focusing on 500 and 600 level courses. And from there, you generally can choose anything from biology, chemistry, environmental sciences, computer science, data analysis, and even like my own lab, since some of our samples for my other PhD student in our lab, like the fetal samples come from a Spanish speaking country. She's actually currently enrolled in Spanish as part of her degree.
Can you clarify what the difference between the different levels are? I assume difficulty or in like intensity, but just to make sure we're
Mhm.
on the same
Yeah,
idea.
of course. So typically 100 through 400 are actually undergraduate level courses. And you can take those, such as like the other PhD student in my lab. She petitioned to be able to take Spanish. So if you want to take one of those, you can petition or audit or just sit in on those lectures. They generally probably will not be counted towards your graduation credit requirements unless accepted by the university and your grad advisor committee. But generally, the 500 and 600 level courses will only have graduate students.
For these 500 to 600 level courses, are they at all difficult to get or difficult to get into like undergraduate courses are, or are there usually like enough seats for everybody?
There are usually enough seats for everybody as long as you don't take months to go apply. Because, for example, for the spring semester, which starts in January, they just opened up enrollment actually October 1st. So you have basically until the semester starts to enroll. As long as you don't take 2 months, 3 months, you can generally get your first choice. I've
Okay,
never had a
gotcha.
problem.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming then that every student's pathway is different because every student is pursuing a different dissertation, right?
Pretty much, along with the other fact that sometimes certain classes will be served for certain semesters for specific years, and they might not be returning. So everyone's course load will look kind of different, but in general, for example, to graduate, you need to take 60 credits, and before you can take your comprehensive exams, your oral and your written, you need to have 45 credits done, and 37 of those 45 credits have to be um, 500 and 600 level courses. So generally for that, it's all required. And then for biology, there are other requirements such as like, take three 1 credit seminars.
Okay. So then do you take a lot of classes like with the same people in your cohort, assuming that they're like core classes and such?
Yes, I would say, I mean, even last year, I had basically the same class schedule as the other PhD student in my lab. Her and I would just walk from one class to another, and it was just like we would just be working together, studying together. It was nice, but now this semester we haven't, as we only have one class together. But in general, I tend to see pretty similar faces that I see in my other classes, and usually they're just like bio grad students who are first or second years. Um, yeah.
So then for these classes or like the 500, 600 classes, how big are they in terms of like how many students there are? You say there are a lot of familiar faces and stuff. I assume
Mhm.
it's pretty small then.
Roughly. So I would say if so, there's a distinction. So sometimes the 500 level courses could be mixed with undergrads. So for example, be like a 471 and a 571, which my first semester I took microbial ecology, and that was a mixed class. And so that had half undergrads and half grad. Well, actually, it was more two-thirds undergrads and a third grad students. And that was roughly 30 in size. But if they're just only graduate student classes, then they're roughly about 10 to 15.
What are those mixed classes like? Do the professors have to cater to both undergrad and graduate? How does that work?
So they do. Um, it was interesting, I would say. I think it'd be my first semester. I did not expect to like that they would be offering. Also coming from a small liberal arts college, we didn't have graduate students, so I didn't really know what to expect. But the teacher, the professors, they usually provide, we have the same curriculum, we learn the same lectures, we get the same homework. But I have noticed that she was my professor. She graded differently. So she graded easier for the undergrads and graded harder for the grad students, which was made sense. She also had different expectations for us, as in when we broke them into groups for discussion on papers or different studies that we were reading for class for that week. She expected the grad students to lead those discussions and to help facilitate conversations in their mini groups with their undergrads before we came back into one bigger group. Um, and even when we wrote proposals, like just general research proposals, just like what are you interested in, like those kind of work. Um, she usually gave one grad student to other undergraduate students to review the papers, like as a sort of as an example of like this is like a good paper or like this is what a graduate student did. And then so it's like allowed us graduate students to provide feedback to the undergraduate students, while also letting the undergraduates to see like what our proposals look like in comparison to theirs and like the difference in level of detail, um, and our focus and like how broad or how specialized or how like specific we made like our questions and hypotheses and methods.
That sounds like a really useful and interesting class. Huh.
Mhm.
Um, so you said that like you didn't really know what to expect coming into grad school because you didn't have grad students at your like college at undergrad. So what's
Mhm.
been the biggest shock, I suppose, when it comes to now being a grad student?
Okay, so what I guess has been like most challenging, but also like new to me has been how courses do not circulate each year. So generally at my undergraduate college, if you can usually predict when courses would occur, and maybe it's just like specific to my school, but we generally knew like, oh, like, okay, organic chemistry would only start in the fall semester. And if you wanted to take it, you had to be there for the fall semester. You couldn't start in the spring semester. But then for me, moving to a bigger university that is 10 times the size of what I went to, roughly, I went to school with had 2,000 students. NAU has 21,000 students. So like for me, this is a big increase, but the classes are much more unpredictable. And so last year there was a quantitative biology class that focused on Python use. And like a lot of my work involves doing bioinformatics and analyzing my omics data. And so I was like really interested and really wanted to take it. But when I went to approach the professor to ask him, he told me that, yeah, I might teach it next year at the same time. I might teach in the fall. You will just have to see. And I think for me, it's like realizing that a lot of my coursework and a lot of my course load is more dependent on the availability of the professors and a big university that have like their own research going on. Some of them are taking sabbatical. Um, and just generally also just some depending on like their title. Some of them might be having to teach undergraduate classes at the same time. So I think for me, it's been more like the unpredictability of like when classes will be offered.
That kind of leads me to my next question. So, from an undergraduate perspective, the whole way that grad school operates is a little bit vague.
Mhm.
Because from my understanding at least, there are like the classes and then there's the dissertation. So how do those operate in relation to each other? Are they like parallel? Do you like do your dissertation later in the like in your time at the PhD?
So your course load generally should relate to what you're studying. It's supposed to help you provide that background, that information that you need to conduct your research, and also just like help you as you prepare for your comprehensive exams. So right now I'm a second year PhD student. Hopefully next year, once I've built my credits and have really detailed and written out and articulated what I want my work to look like, my thesis to look like, then I will have to take my comprehensive exams, so my written and my oral, and that will be judged and by my committee that I personally created. And so at NAU, at least one member of your committee has to be outside of my department. And so since I'm in biology, it has to be outside of my department. I went a little extreme and got someone from a different university across the country in UMass Amherst who studies plant biology, who is a colleague and co-collaborator with my professor. So once that has been done and you pass your exams, now you're a PhD candidate. And then once you're a candidate, now you're preparing to write your dissertation, write your thesis, do the rest of your experiments, and you're still probably taking classes like seminars and taking dissertation credits that are just like more right, like, yeah, like I'm not taking classes because I'm doing my dissertation. So like I might enroll in 3 credits per semester to like emphasize the fact that I am working on this. And that will then you basically spend like those next years working on your dissertation, working on your thesis before you defend it at the end, at the culmination of your degree.
Okay, so thank you for explaining that. When it comes to when you're just focusing on your course load, how many classes are you usually taking a semester and
Mhm.
like how many units, etc.?
Yeah. So you need to take at least 9 credit hours at NAU to be able to keep your funding, whether you're on a graduate teaching assistantship or a graduate research assistantship. So I'm on a graduate research assistantship, so I'm not TAing any classes. I'm also just doing research for my advisor and for my own research, which means like I have funding. But if you are TAing, then that also will serve for credits and that'll also be funding your pay. And so to be able to maintain that funding either way as a GRA or a GTA, you need to have 9 credit hours. And usually that results in me taking roughly 4 to 5 classes because classes as a graduate student will roughly be between 1 to 3 credits each class I enroll in. So I currently have one independent study with my professor. That's 2 credits. I have 2 seminars that each one is 1 credit. And then I'm taking 2 classes. So those are 3 credits. And this is just because I want to be able to space it out. So by the end of my 5th semester, I'm taking my comps. And that's just more of my plan.
Okay, so for our final question, kind of a fun one. What's been your favorite class so far?
Yeah. So my favorite class has been probably, I have one of two options. One of them is an ecological data analysis class. I know it doesn't sound fun because it's data analysis, but I was really interested and like really wanted to take it just because in undergrad I got an introduction to different coding languages, and I really want to learn more about R since a lot of my like analysis for my omics data or just like community composition data is done in R. And in that class allowed me to just like work on a data set that my professor gave me and just like learn like how to analyze metatranscriptomics data, metagenomics data, and just like play with it essentially. And then the other one has been a metagenomics class. And that's I think what I'm doing right now. It's the independent study with my professor. And that's just giving me a lot of like the background to the molecular genetics side of how we analyze microbial data and understanding how we clean up the data, how we like analyze the contamination and the completeness of our sequences, our sequencing data. And just seeing a lot of like what seems to be generally understood when you read these papers but like finding like the background to them and how they work. So a little nerdy, but I've really enjoyed the bioinformatics sides of my classes so far.
Yeah, that all sounds so interesting. Okay, so that does it for all of our questions, but thank you so much for joining us. Myself and everyone at the EVI wish you the best of luck on all of your future years in your PhD. And again, we thank you for having this conversation with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for checking out the EBI seminar series on graduate students and their experiences. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more content on graduate programs. Be sure to follow along for future installments or check out our previous series and explore our social media, which are all linked in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you next time.